and welcome to episode 10 of Talking Point. My name is Chelsea Sikora. I'm the creative director for the Eau Claire Area Chamber of Commerce, coming to you from the Wind Technology Studio, and we want to thank our media sponsor, Royal Credit Union. Today's episode is focused around Chippewa Valley student surveys, and who better to kick us off than President and CEO Dave Miner.
Hello and welcome to our next edition of Talking Point. My name is Dave Miner. I'm the CEO here at the Chamber, as you know, and today our guest is Tina Probst. And as you probably are aware, Tina is our Workforce Director, Emerging Talent. So our topic today, folks, is we're going to be talking about a survey we released a couple of months back about what's going to happen with the graduates from CVTC and UWEC. As we know, workforce is an issue for us here in the Chippewa Valley, and part of that workforce are those graduates. But we wanted to understand from the Chamber's standpoint, what do we need to do as a community, as an area, to make sure we are engaging the students, but also creating a community they want to live in. And so to do so, we need to find out their point of view. So we decided to create this survey, and I'm going to have Tina kind of explain what it is and how we went about it. But it was critical for us to, again, to make decisions, we need the correct data. And so, Tina, walk us through a little bit of creating the survey, what we're looking for, and then we'll get into some of the results. Again, I just want to remind our listeners, this is the beginning of this. So we're going to keep this at 30,000 feet, but the full studies will be released over the next month or so people can really understand them and look at them. But we'll also be working with our city council here in Eau Claire, Altoona, the county board, surrounding areas, that they get this information, because a lot of those decisions, they're the ones who have to make it and understand what the next generation is looking for wanting to stay in this beautiful area. So Tina, talk a little bit about how you created the surveys, the questions we asked, and the process we went through to get that hard data.
Yeah, so we ended up working with our two local institutions here, UW Eau Claire as well as CVTC. And what we did is we launched a survey that covered a few different topics relating to the community at large in Eau Claire, what they like about it, the job field, job force here in Eau Claire, as well as things that they wish were different. And maybe just another little bit of background. We know from studies that the workforce is declining in Wisconsin, and it's forecasted in the future to be at a sticky point in 10 years. We're gonna be at a point where we have not enough people to enter our workforce that are leaving. We are going to have actually more people leaving the workforce than entering it. And so one of the things that this survey really looks at is how can we retain those students that are coming to these institutions to be part of our workforce. A majority, I don't know if it's a majority, but maybe back when I was in school, a majority of the students who came to UW Eau Claire are actually from Minnesota.
Correct. And that's still true. I mean, we get them, and to that point, when we look at that graduation, 40% of grads from UWC staying here. What's the good thing is about only 3 or 4% are coming from the Chippewa Valley originally. Yeah. So that is where the net comes from. So go on.
Yeah. So I see this more as a stepping stone for a talent attraction initiative. How can we ensure that businesses here are thinking about the data that we're receiving as a tool to inform their hiring practices and tap into the local talent that's coming out of our 4-year college here, as well as our tech education school. So what we did is we partnered with both schools. We offered the survey at 2 different times, and we were able to yield about 576 responses total from students that are currently enrolled in both schools. They are current students. Some of them are at the graduate level. Some of them are freshmen, and we got responses across the board. But what we asked them about was, what is your experience with the Chippewa Valley? And we try to leave it at large as the Chippewa Valley, because we know that if students are coming here, they're experiencing Eau Claire, Chippewa Falls, Menominee, which we are priding ourselves on of being such a great community of the Chippewa Valley. So we asked them about things like, how do you what do you think about our recreation activities? What do you think about accessibility, restaurant options, shopping options? We got a lot of good feedback about those, and luckily we are ranking really high in those areas. And so kudos to all the folks that really worked on the downtown area in Eau Claire over the last few decades, and really investing into this area to make it an attraction for those students. But we also asked them about, how are you connected with the business community right now? Do you feel connected? What do you view as a value to you as a student to get connected? Is it through on-campus job fairs? Is it through online postings? All these different things that go into hiring practices so that they can get in the door with some of these businesses. And then we left open-ended question just to see what can we do better for the residents and for the students in this area. So we got a lot of good suggestions, which I'm happy. We can probably talk about a few today, but not all of them, but they'll be in our report that we release.
And again, I just want to remind everybody, this will, in its entirety, again, within a few months as we do this, the whole thing will be released. So anybody who wants to really do a deep dive or understand maybe from their business or what with their level within community, how they can interact, they'll certainly have the time to do so. So if we look a little bit at CVTC, and again, as Tina mentioned, when we did this, we did them at 2 different times, and, certainly different student bodies and age and things, but very similar responses in some ways, but in others too, very dramatically opposite of what they need. So again, the purpose of doing these individually is so we can respond to each and not think one is going to be similar to the other. So as we look at CVTC, Tina, what did you pull out as the top 3 factors when they're looking for an employer, compensation, benefits? What is it they want when they graduate?
That's an excellent question. So this was probably the biggest difference between the 2 schools. I think part of it has to do with the demographic of the students who go to CVTC versus UW Eau Claire. They tend to be a little bit more established, older students.
Probably mid-20s or so?
Correct, yeah. Somebody who's maybe not fresh out of high school, that's maybe been in the workforce a little bit and is going back to school, or pursuing some type of degree that can help them further their career. So what we saw as the top 3 factors at CVTC were compensation, benefit packages, and fulfilling work. Not surprising by any means that these were the top 3 things that they want to see out of the employers, but a noticeable difference between UW Eau Claire students who wanted to see something else. So,
And one of the things that we picked out from a little bit CVTC, but I think probably more UWEC, is the high percentage of students who want more connection to the business community.
They do.
And can you talk a little bit about that and how we are, through our interns here and through in the community, encouraging more of that, and the why?
Yeah. So we did see that majority of the students from both schools feel either slightly connected or not connected at all to the business community. There was a very small percentage that said, yes, I feel connected, or I feel very connected. And some of the things that they had mentioned in the open-ended comments was they want to see employers at career fairs. They want to see employers offering internships so they can get a foot in the door. And they're finding it difficult right now to find those opportunities. I know both schools currently offer Handshake as a tool for students to see online job postings, internship opportunities. And there was some students that had expressed that they wish more employers were on Handshake. Handshake is a similar tool to Indeed, or I don't know what the other ones are, but think of it as like a job posting portal. We use it here with our interns, and they really want to see employers using those, but they also want to see some FaceTime with the employers at the career fairs. There's so many awesome businesses that offer really great careers in this area that are being untapped by our students because they simply don't know your business exists.
And one of the things, again, as we look at this data and then look at how we at the Chamber can help, that's one of the things that we will start sharing with businesses is how easy it is to use Handshake to put an internship in there and get through that process. Because still, even though we've increased our number here, I still talk to a lot of businesses who just think that it's more work to do it than it is to have it done,
And I can sympathize with that. If I was an HR manager and I was asked to post on my website and 2 other websites, that's a lot. But I see the benefit of it as well because I use Handshake to get interns for our workforce pillar. And I can just share an example. I posted last week and I already have 7 applications. Yeah. Students are eager to learn about these positions, and they value the employers that are taking the time to learn what is already put in place for them.
Right. So those businesses that are listening or individuals, if you struggle with that or want to learn more, please reach out to Tina or myself, and we'll help you understand using it again is an easy way to start the process.
And you can pick the schools. There's a lot of schools that are utilizing Handshake, but if you're looking to attract people from out of this area, you can, let's say you're a business that has a program that maybe one of the schools doesn't support. You can still post on there to people who are enrolled in a different university in Wisconsin, and they'll see it. Yep. So,
and again, remind people that one of the critical reasons for internships for us, for everybody we know, is those students who do an internship in the community they're in, they're more likely to stay here.
Yeah, which is what we want.
Which is what we want. And again, the other point I think sometimes people don't remember or know is the fact you get to interview the interns. It's not like the person who applies is going to come to you.
No.
You've got 7. We know we're going to probably hire 2. You're going to interview those people. And are they the right fit for you? So I think it's something for people to look. So we talk a little bit about, again, looking at the student suggestions for improvement to our area. There's half a dozen or more that we have here. Go ahead and talk a little bit about what are the combinations, what are some of the similar things that they're looking for?
So I'll start off with the most overwhelming response we got, which is that students are really struggling to find affordable housing in this area. Yep. We open-ended the question of what are things that can be improved, and I would say 60% of the students that responded said something in terms of affordable housing and that being a barrier to them wanting to stay here after they graduate. Yep. They move in with roommates while they're in college. It's a bit more affordable. It's still high. Right. But then having to transition out of student housing, they can't afford the prices right now. And so I don't blame them. They're high. Yeah. And so that is overwhelmingly between both schools. The biggest suggestion is how do we make it so that students can stay here with the current wage and wages, they relate into that. Somebody had given us a very clear example of I could stay here, but at the wage that I would make in this career, in this area, I'd be spending it all on rent.
Sure.
And so it just makes more sense for me to move home to, let's just say, Minnesota, where they can be making more and potentially living with their parents to save with
in mom and dad's basement, but but that's reality.
It's reality, and that's where a lot of students are at. I think, not to bring in the pandemic, but I think the pandemic did a number on a lot of the students that are currently in school. And so it's a reality that we're having to deal with, and prices are high in this area. And I anecdotally still, this is not research, but I have heard that the prices are relating to, downtown St. Paul, Minneapolis. They're high.
Sure. When we look at some of the other things, and again, both these surveys were done so we at the Chamber, the community, can understand which ones can we affect? How do we look at and, be perfect if we could adjust all of them, but we know we're not. But, when we look at some of these is, more entertainment options for 18, 20-year-olds. Yep. Again, obviously, clearly, we're talking UWC versus CVTC. So, again, what are those? Improved walkability, support for the arts. When I look at those, those are enhancements to what we already have.
For sure.
Because again, when I compare us to other communities, and we're second in the state of Wisconsin for paved bike trails, walkability.
Yep.
So I think again, those when we hand those out to the city or the county, again, that can be implemented in their planning stages, and then to ask the question, where are they, and things like that. So we've talked a little bit about the individual surveys and some of the findings. One of the things that we talked about a little bit earlier is the students are feeling a little disconnected.
Yeah.
Why do you think they are? What is it that's not being done to maybe expand on that?
Yeah, I've heard it multiple times, and I experienced it as a student. There is just a bubble sometimes that it feels like around campus, because your classes are there. Maybe you live in the dorms, where getting off campus is hard, especially if you're a student that doesn't have a vehicle or depends on people for rides or uses the bus system. You're really limited on where you can go in Eau Claire.
Okay.
So I think of just at the university standpoint, the bus line can get you downtown. It can get you over to the mall. But it doesn't, hit up the industrial areas as well. There's a disconnect to know, what does Eau Claire bring to the table in those areas. I'll just talk about our interns here. I have 2 interns that are working with me currently. They're graduating in May. And at the beginning of this internship, I had mentioned to them, I want you to become experts in Eau Claire. And through their time here and the connections that they've made, I have heard them say more than once, I had no idea this business existed.
Yep.
And I had no idea that Eau Claire manufactured this product or whatever it is. And so I think offering entertainment options for students out of campus, providing connections for students off campus, and having the employers go to campus where they already are definitely ways that we can get them to feel more connected.
Well, again, I just want to remind our viewers, this is the first time we've done this.
Yeah.
Like any good chamber, we borrowed this from another chamber who's been doing it for quite a while. I think as we get into this year 2, 3, 4, 5 down the road, again, now we have data, but we can compare it. We can see how we're improving. Again, this is just a first step to look at 2 huge economic engines in our community, UWC, CVTC. How do we become stronger partners with them?
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping. And this year we're celebrating our birthday. We've got 110th birthday. CVTC has been here for 113 years. UWC is 1 year behind us. So, as 3 entities who have been in this area for a long time, at some point you kind of become on cruise control, and my hope is we take it off a cruise and say, okay, how do we change this for the next generations?
Yeah.
Because it's certainly going to be different than, as you know, a recent grad at UWC, it's different today, and we have to make sure as a community, are we providing those incentives, activities, whatever you want to say, that make them want to stay here or at least go for a couple of years, but definitely, and we saw this in a little bit of the survey, they want to come back,
Does it still make me a recent grad if it's been 7 years?
It has.
Okay.
It is.
I feel older than that.
No, well, you do, but I'm going on my age. So yes, it's we are talking real recent grad here. So when we look at part of this, one of the questions we asked is, UWC grads are what are the factors that they're looking at when they're selecting an employer? What should local employers be looking at to maintain that?
Yeah, I think, again, we had talked about CVTCs being compensation, benefit packages, fulfilling work. This is where they differ a little bit. Number 1 is compensation. So that's not surprising. However, UW Eau Claire said the second would be fulfilling work and then flexibility. I think generationally, this makes a little bit more sense because most of the students that are at the university are in Gen Z.
Yep.
And some of the studies that have been done about Gen Z do share just about flexibility being a priority. They want to work for a business that recognizes the work-life balance, letting them work maybe non-traditional hours because it works better for them and they're more productive. But that is what they're looking for out of an employer. I like that both of them have fulfilling work on there. It means that the programs that both of our university and CVTC have are bringing in grads that believe in what they do,
Right.
you know?
And when we look at, certainly UWC, the students are all here within Eau Claire.
Mm-hmm.
CVTC, we know that they're spread out on a much grander scale.
Yeah.
But the survey we did with them really are the students within our immediate area.
We limited it to the Eau Claire, Chippewa Falls, and Menominee locations, just so it reflected the Chippewa Valley.
The Chippewa
area.
Valley, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted people to understand it because I want them to understand that we're not, again, they're all the way from, almost on one side of the state to the other, for goodness sakes. And, they cover quite the area when you really look at their
I think
map,
it's 11 districts. So
Yeah. So I want people to realize, again, we focused on students within our area. So we really, again, are getting data and information that we can have an impact on. So looking at the time, and I'm always making sure that I keep my producer extremely happy on our time for this. Tina, give me one or two other thoughts you want to make sure that right now, and again, remind people this is just the beginning of the data. We're going to be working over the next several months to really get it out to everybody, hold different meetings and things like that to again, start to share all this so people can take information that affects their area and hopefully make some changes and additions to it. But what would be the one or two things you want people today to really understand what came out of this?
Yeah. I think if I could sum it up in one thing that I got out of both of these surveys by reviewing them, it would just be that connection is key. People are more likely to stay if they have that type of connection. Sure. And this showed up in the data. I mean, when we look at CVTC, majority of the students already lived here.
Okay.
And they are going to school at CVTC. There is that built-in connection because maybe they have family that live in the area. Maybe they grew up here. I don't know what their situation is. But when we ask them the question of, are you planning to stay in the Chippewa Valley post your time at CVTC, majority of them said yes.
Okay.
Whereas we look at the university, 80% moved here for college. And when we asked them, would you settle down? They said, yeah, I could see myself settling down. It was like 67%. But then when we asked, are you planning to? 50% are not.
Yeah.
And we don't have the factors perhaps that we do with CVTC with retention where maybe there's family here, maybe there's whatever.
Sure.
But what can we do to help them make those connections so that they can say, I want to stay here. I feel connected. I feel like this is my community. I'm a product of that myself. I grew up in we know each other since I was a teenager and went through the youth leadership program in Superior. But I am one of those examples where I moved here for college and I didn't have any family that lived directly in Eau Claire, but I fell in love with the community. I got connected with, people in a church, and it made sense for me to stay here. I built friendships that were really great, and I stayed here, and I've not left, and now my husband and I live in the area, and we're going to settle down here and stay here for a long time. And not that it needs to be that way for everybody, but just the small economic impact of retaining more students, even a couple percentages more than what's being retained right now, is going to be huge for our community, especially with what we're expecting in the next couple of years with our workforce. Right.
And again, that is only going to add, and another thing we'll start talking about in a few months is the Department of Administration's projection growth for the state of Wisconsin over the next 25 years. Mm-hmm. We're one of 3 counties going to see double-digit growth. Right. Well, that's only going to happen if we work off of this type of a survey, try to keep more college graduates in our area from both schools. That's only going to make sure that number comes alive. Mm-hmm. So again, in part is why we did this, is to show what we need to do as a community. I certainly want to thank, both our strong partners at UWC and CVTC for allowing us to do these surveys. Sometimes things aren't always as easy as I think they will be. and so I know we had to work through some hoops, but both colleges were very ecstatic to work with us and help us get this. Yep. And I'm surprised as I talk about doing this with some of my counterparts, they're like, oh yeah, boy, we never thought of maybe asking people what they want when they want to stay here. So
Right.
kind of glad we're ahead of the curve, and I'll do a little shout out to Kelsey out in South Dakota for allowing us to steal this from her and work it in. But again, just want to thank Tina and the opportunity, but again, thank our partners for allowing us to do this. The full reports, as I mentioned in the beginning, will be coming out in the next month or so as we start this process and sharing it throughout the summer to, what does this mean and how do we build on this from a community. So thank you all for listening in, and we'll see you in the next talking point.
As Dave mentioned, that wraps up today's episode. As always, we are coming to you from the Wind Technology Studio, and a special thank you to our media sponsor, Royal Credit Union. If you have any questions or would like to learn more, feel free to reach out to us here at the Chamber. We'll catch you in the next one.